A June morning. Sun was streaming into the small apartment. In the suburbs of Philadelphia. In the kitchen, the sound of eggs sizzling in the pan filled the air, while the rich aroma of coffee rose. From the coffee maker, Rebecca Harrison stirred the scrambled eggs, with practiced hands, keeping an eye on her son's morning routine. "Ethan, it's already 700. You'll be late if you don't hurry." Almost ready came the reply from the living room. Her 12-year-old son had probably been clinging to his bed until the last possible moment. "As usual, I'll motivate you for joining me." Rebecca smiled softly as she plated breakfast for two. Ethan appeared in the kitchen just after Rebecca had placed glasses of orange juice on the table. Running his hand through his brown hair, still messy from sleep, he sat down in the chair next to his mother. His height had shot up dramatically this past year, and he now reached his mother's shoulder. His green eyes, which held traces of his father's features, were still sleepily narrowed. "You have your math test today, don't you, too?" Rebecca asked as she placed a plate in front of her son. "I think I'll be okay," Ethan said, picking up his fork and taking a bite of eggs. "I reviewed everything again last night." Rebecca placed her hand on her son's head. Ethan was studious and consistently maintained high grades. Watching him try to adapt to the changes in their life after the divorce made her heart ache. Balancing her real estate sales job with being a mother was never easy, but Rebecca felt every day that it was because of Ethan that she could keep going. The divorce 2 years ago had been a major turning point in Rebecca's life. Her marriage to her ex-husband Michael had been happy for the first few years, but gradually, thank you for joining me. His obsession with work and indifference toward home became apparent. Michael, who worked as a salesman, had increased his thinking due to pressure about his performance, and he became increasingly unstable at home. By the time Ethan started elementary school, the rift between them had become irreparably deep. When Rebecca decided on divorce, she put Ethan's happiness above all else. Michael had initially said he would fight for custody, but eventually agreed to visitation rights once a month. The mediation had proceeded relatively smoothly, and Rebecca was able to obtain custody. Still, a father was still a father to Ethan, and seeing how he looked forward to visitation days sometimes made her feel conflicted. "Speaking of which, next Saturday is your visitation day with Dad." Rebecca casually brought up the topic. Ethan's hand paused for a moment. "I know. Did you have fun last time? You said you went to see a movie?" "Yes." Ethan's response was short, and he didn't seem inclined to elaborate further. Rebecca observed her son's expression carefully. Lately she had noticed that Ethan didn't seem as happy as before when talking about visits with his father. Previously, he would tell her detailed stories about the movie content in the restaurants he went to with his father. But recently he often dismissed it with just, "It was fun," or "It was good." "Is there something bothering you?" Rebecca asked gently. Ethan shook his head. "Not really. It's just that Dad's been asking me lots of questions lately." "What kind of questions?" "Just normal stuff about school. About Mom's work." Ethan shrugged. "But it feels like he's asking more than before." Rebecca felt a small uneasiness in her chest, but tried not to let it show on her face. After the divorce, she had heard that Michael had lost his job and was struggling to find new work. Perhaps financial hardship was affecting his behavior. "Your father is worried about you too. Since he lives apart from you, he probably wants to know about things." Ethan nodded silently, looking at the clock. It was almost time to leave for school. "How about we go to the shopping mall this afternoon? We promised to go buy new sneakers, remember?" Rebecca changed the subject. Ethan's face finally brightened. "Really, you remembered?" "Of course I wouldn't forget a promise to my son." The two quickly finished breakfast and began preparing to leave. Rebecca checked Ethan's lunchbox and put her car keys and wallet in her handbag. When she gave her son a "have a good day" kiss at the front door, Ethan accepted it with slight embarrassment but without resistance. "I'll pick you up after school. So wait at the school gate." "Got it. Good luck at work," to Mom. As she watched Ethan's retreating figure heading to school, Rebecca organized the day's schedule in her head. In the morning she had a preview of a new property, and in the afternoon she had client meetings. It would be a busy day, but in the evening, she would have time to enjoy shopping with Ethan. Life as a mother and son wasn't easy. But these small accumulated moments of happiness were what mattered most to Rebecca. After 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Rebecca parked her car in front of the main gate of the school to pick up Ethan. Among the other parents' cars lined up, she looked for her son. When she spotted Ethan coming out of the school building, she waved to signal him. Ethan jogged toward the car and got into the passenger seat. "Good work today. How did the math test go?" Rebecca asked as she started the car. "I think it went okay. The last problem was a bit difficult," Ethan answered while fastening his seatbelt. "How was your day, Mom?" "Busy, but it was a good day. A new client might have found a lovely house." Rebecca smiled. "Now let's go pick out those sneakers we promised." Willow Grove Shopping Mall was busy for a weekday evening. Rebecca finally found an open space in the parking lot and parked the car. The early summer sun was strong, and the heat rising from the asphalt brushed against their cheeks. Inside the mall, thank you for tuning me. The air conditioning was pleasantly cool. Rebecca and Ethan first headed to the sporting goods store. The store was filled with colorful sneakers and Ethan's eyes were shining. He carefully went around each brand's corner, picking up designs he liked and examining them. "How about these?" Rebecca pointed to white and blue Nike sneakers. "They're simple and would go with any outfit." Ethan picked up the shoe and turned it over to look at it. "Not bad, but can I look around a bit more?" "Of course. There's no need to rush." Rebecca watched with amusement as her son made his selection seriously. For boys his age, shoes were an important fashion item. She had heard from Ethan that which brand you wore often became a topic of conversation among friends. While Ethan was looking at another corner, Rebecca's cell phone rang. Looking at the screen, she saw it was a call from a colleague at the real estate company. "I need to take a work call. I'll be right over there." Rebecca called out to Ethan. "Okay," Ethan answered while picking up red Adidas sneakers. Rebecca moved near the store entrance and answered the phone. The call from her colleague, Sarah, was about a schedule change for tomorrow's property viewing. The content was that the time had been moved up an hour due to the client's convenience, and Rebecca took out her planner to make notes. "No problem, 900 is fine with me," Rebecca confirmed while answering. "I'll prepare the materials tonight." The call ended in about 5 minutes. When Rebecca turned around, she couldn't see Ethan. Looking around the sneaker corner, he wasn't there. A moment of anxiety crossed her mind, but she soon noticed the sound of footsteps coming from the direction of the game corner at the back of the store. "Ethan," Rebecca called out as she headed toward the game corner. There were several arcade games set up there, with a few children who had finished school playing. Ethan was standing in front of the racing game at the very back. But he wasn't playing. He was just staring at the screen. "Ethan, what's wrong?" Rebecca placed her hand on her son's shoulder. Ethan turned around, but his expression seemed a bit pale. "Oh, Mom, are you done with your call?" "Yes, but you look pale. Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Just a little tired." Ethan smiled slightly, but that smile felt stiffer than usual. "Really, thank you for joining me. Did something happen?" "Nothing happened. I was just looking at the game." Ethan lightly pulled his mother's arm. "Let's decide on sneakers. I think I want those red ones from before." Rebecca felt something odd about her son's behavior, but decided not to press him further. When they returned to the sporting goods store, Ethan chose the red Adidas sneakers he had been looking at earlier. Without hesitation, he tried them on. "And the size was fine. I'll take these," Ethan said while checking his feet in the mirror. "Are you sure about these? You said you wanted to look around more earlier." "I want these. They're cool. Aren't they?" Rebecca was a little surprised by her son's sudden decision, but thinking that if he liked them, it was fine. She headed to the register. The clerk was kind and carefully packed the new sneakers in a box. "Thank you," Rebecca said to the clerk while paying. "You have a lovely son." The clerk smiled. "I'm sure he'll be able to run even faster." In his new shoes. Ethan laughed shyly, but his smile wasn't as natural as before. Rebecca kept this in mind as they left the store. While walking through the mall, Rebecca tried to talk to Ethan several times, but he seemed lost in thought, and his responses were short. Usually when they made new purchases, he would talk more happily about them, but today was different. "How about we get some ice cream?" Rebecca suggested, hoping to cheer her son up. No, let's go home. Ethan shook his head. I'm kind of tired. Rebecca placed her hand on her son's head. He didn't seem to have a fever. But he certainly wasn't feeling well. All right, let's go home. The two headed to the parking lot. The evening sun was still strong, and heat waves were rising over the asphalt. Other shoppers were also heading to the parking lot, and the sound of car engines could be heard, here and there. Rebecca tried to remember where their car was parked. A small white car should be somewhere in this large parking lot. Carrying their shopping bags, the two began walking to look for the car. I think it was around there. Rebecca pointed toward the back of the parking lot. Ethan walked silently behind his mother. His expression was still tense, and he occasionally showed gestures of looking back. It was as if he felt like someone was watching him, showing such an anxious manner. Ethan, are you really okay? Rebecca asked again. If there's something bothering you, please talk to me. I'm fine, Mom. Really, there's nothing. Ethan said, as if trying to reassure his mother. But there was a slight tremor in his voice. Rebecca was torn between wanting to question her son more thoroughly and wanting to respect his privacy. Maybe something had happened at school. Or maybe he was worried about friendships. Rebecca was concerned about her son's condition as she took out her car keys. Ethan had been restless for a while now, occasionally turning around to look toward the other side of the parking lot. He had an anxious expression, as if he was looking for someone or trying to hide from someone. Ethan, what's really wrong? You've been acting strange, Rebecca asked as she approached the car. Nothing really, Ethan answered shortly, but his voice clearly contained tension. When Rebecca put her hand on the car door, Ethan suddenly grabbed her arm strongly. The force was stronger than expected, and Rebecca looked at her son in surprise. Ethan's face was pale, and there was fear in his eyes. Mom, want to thank you for joining me. Let's take a taxi home instead of the car. Rebecca was confused. A taxi? Why? We have bags and we have the car. Ethan gripped his mother's arm even tighter. Please, Mom. Don't get in the car right now. But why? Tell me the reason. Rebecca couldn't hide her bewilderment at her son's serious expression. Ethan looked around and lowered his voice. You'll understand soon. Please. Let's move away from here now. At that moment, there was a seriousness in Ethan's expression that she had never seen before. There was an adult-like determination that seemed unthinkable for a 12-year-old child. Rebecca felt her maternal instincts telling her that something was about to happen. All right. Rebecca stopped while still holding the car keys. But explain to me, what are you worried about? Not here. Let's get away from the car. Ethan pulled his mother's hand, making her step back several paces from the car. Rebecca was moved by her son's desperation and decided to follow his words. The two moved away from the car and began walking toward the taxi stand at the edge of the parking lot. Ethan showed a relieved expression, but the tension hadn't lifted yet. Besson? What on earth? Rebecca was about to ask when her son suddenly stopped. Mom, don't turn around, but look toward our car. Ethan's voice was shaking. Rebecca felt her heart beating faster as she slowly turned around. She gasped at what she saw. A man was approaching their car. The way he walked, his build, and his silhouette from behind were familiar to Rebecca. It was Michael, her ex-husband. He was carefully looking around while approaching Rebecca's car. He seemed to be holding something in his hand, and she could see him crouching down under the car. Rebecca's body froze with fear. Why was Michael here? Why was he approaching her car? Mom, I was right, wasn't I? Ethan's voice sounded distant. Rebecca looked at her son. You knew that he was here. Ethan nodded slightly. I saw him at the game corner. I saw Dad in the parking lot through the window. That's when I thought he might be trying to do something to the car. Why would he do such a thing? Rebecca's voice was trembling. During the last visit, Dad asked me all sorts of things about Mom's car. Where you park it. At first, I thought it was just normal conversation. But seeing him today, I was sure. Rebecca gripped her son's hand tightly. She understood how carefully Ethan had observed the situation and tried to protect his mother. The 12-year-old boy had shown judgment that rivaled an adult's. Michael was still lurking around the car. He would occasionally stand up to check his surroundings, then go back to doing something with the car. Rebecca tried to take out her cell phone, but her hands were shaking too much to do it properly. Mom, let's call a taxi. Let's get away from here. Ethan suggested calmly. Fortunately, one car was waiting at the taxi stand. Rebecca and Ethan hurried toward that car. The driver was a middle-aged man with a kind-looking face. Right to? The driver asked. Rebecca gave him the address while getting into the back seat. Ethan also sat next to her, still watching the parking lot. When the taxi started moving, both of them finally breathed a sigh of relief. Ethan, you were really brave. Rebecca pulled her son close to her. If you hadn't noticed, I was scared, Ethan honestly confessed, but I wanted to protect Mom. Rebecca almost started crying. She was moved by her son's growth, courage, and the depth of his love. At the same time, anger and fear about Michael's actions welled up inside her. What do you think Dad was doing to the car? Ethan asked in a small voice. I don't know. But it wasn't anything good. Rebecca answered honestly. But we're safe now thanks to you. The scenery visible from the taxi window was beautiful. But Rebecca's heart was complicated. She had thought the divorce from her ex-husband was finished business. But apparently, it wasn't so for Michael. She had to think about what he had been planned and what she should do from now on. Mom, shouldn't we call the police? Ethan's suggestion was spot on. Yes, I'll contact them as soon as we get home. Rebecca stroked her son's head. You're really dependable. The taxi quietly passed through the residential area, heading toward their apartment. Rebecca looked out the window while thinking about how to respond from now on, reporting to the police, checking the car, and above all, ensuring Ethan's safety was the top priority. When the taxi turned the corner of the residential area, Rebecca and Ethan's apartment came into view. Their home in the small two-story apartment complex was bathed in the evening sun, giving off a warm light. However, Rebecca's heart was heavy. She needed to talk with her son in more detail about Michael's behavior they had witnessed in the parking lot. When the taxi stopped, Rebecca paid the driver. Thank you very much, she said while getting out of the car with her son. Ethan held the shopping bags while still looking around cautiously. When they reached the apartment entrance, Rebecca turned to her son while taking out her keys. Ethan, can you tell me more details about what happened today? Yes. Ethan nodded slightly. The two quietly entered the room. Rebecca first drew the window curtains so they couldn't be seen from outside. Ethan sat on the sofa with his hands folded on his knees. His posture had a seriousness beyond his years. First, let me say that you really did well. Rebecca sat next to her son and gently placed her hand on his shoulder. Thank you for protecting me. Ethan showed a somewhat relieved expression. But the tension hadn't lifted yet. You said you saw Dad at the game corner. Can you tell me more details? Ethan took a deep breath before beginning to speak. While Mom was on the phone, I was looking at sneakers, but something felt strange. I felt like someone was watching me. Watching you? Yes, so I went toward the game corner. From the window there, you can see the parking lot clearly. Ethan clenched his hands tightly. Then I saw Dad near our car. Rebecca gasped. Are you sure it was Dad? No mistake? I remembered Dad's way of walking and the clothes he was wearing. Ethan's voice was full of conviction. But what was strange was that Dad was acting like he was hiding. Acting like he was hiding. Yes. He was hiding behind other cars and checking around so other people wouldn't find him. Ethan narrowed his eyes as if remembering the situation. That's when I got scared. Rebecca felt anger rising in her chest as she listened to her son's story. Michael had intentionally followed them and was trying to do something to the car. Ethan, can you also tell me about the visits with Dad? You said he's been asking you various questions lately, right? Ethan hesitated a little but eventually opened his mouth. At first, it was normal. We went to see movies and ate at restaurants. But starting about 3 visits ago, it became strange. How so? Dad started asking really detailed questions about Mom. Ethan looked at his mother anxiously. About work. About customers. About where you park the car. Rebecca felt chills down her spine. About the car too? Yes. Which shopping malls we go to often. Whether you always park in the same place. Ethan's voice became smaller. At first, I thought it was just normal conversation. But gradually I thought it was strange. What else? Dad wanted to know my cell phone number and asked detailed questions about Mom's company address. Ethan started tearing up. I answered him. I'm sorry. Rebecca hugged her son. You're not at fault. It's natural to trust your father. However, inside, she was boiling with anger. Michael had been using their son to gather information and engaging in stalking behavior. Moreover, it was clear that he had used that information for today's actions. Mom, what do you think Dad was doing to the car? Ethan asked anxiously. I don't know, but it certainly wasn't anything good. Rebecca stood up. Let's contact the police. Rebecca took out her cell phone and dialed 911. When the operator answered, she calmly explained the situation. She reported in detail about the stalking behavior by her ex-husband and the suspicious actions toward the car. We'll dispatch a patrol car. We'll also need to check your car. The operator responded calmly. Are you currently in a safe place? Yes, we're at home, Rebecca answered. 30 minutes later, two police officers visited the apartment. An older male officer and a young female officer, both kind and professional. Rebecca and Ethan explained the situation in detail. Again, your son's quick thinking is wonderful. The female officer smiled at Ethan. You were very brave. Ethan nodded shyly. We need to check your car, the male officer explained. We've also called a technician. If anything was planted, we'll be able to find it. An hour later, the police contacted them. A GPS tracking device had been found on Rebecca's car. It was attached to the bottom of the car with a magnet and had the capability to transmit location information in real time. This device can be easily purchased on the internet, the police officer explained. It was probably being used to monitor your movement patterns. Rebecca trembled with fear. Michael might have been monitoring her actions for weeks or even months. We'll request an arrest warrant for your ex-husband, Michael Harrison, the officer continued, on charges of stalking and illegal trespassing. Late that night, a call from the police revealed that Michael had been arrested. He was found at his home and taken into custody without resistance. According to the police investigation, photos of Rebecca and Ethan and notebooks recording their activities were found in his room. Rebecca hugged Ethan while finally breathing a sigh of relief. It's okay now, Dad can no longer approach us. Mom, did I do the right thing? Ethan asked anxiously. Of course you protected us. Rebecca kissed her son's forehead. You're a real hero. Ethan smiled slightly, but sadness still remained in his eyes. He was trying to understand with his 12-year-old heart the complex feelings about having to report his father to the police. What happens now? Ethan asked. A restraining order will be issued. Dad won't be able to come near us. Rebecca held her son's hand. And Dad will receive help to cure his illness. 3 months had passed, and on a September afternoon, Rebecca and Ethan came out of the courthouse building. The autumn sun was warm, and thin clouds floated in the sky. Today the restraining order against Michael had been officially extended, and he was mandated to receive treatment at a psychiatric facility. It's over, Rebecca exhaled deeply. Ethan walked holding his mother's hand. During these 3 months, he had also continued meeting with a counselor. Once a week at first. He suffered from guilt about betraying his father. But with the help of professionals, he was gradually able to sort out his feelings. Mom, do you think Dad will get better? Ethan asked in a small voice. I'm sure he will. Dad was sick too. If he receives proper treatment, he'll surely get better. Rebecca looked down at her son and smiled. But that's not our responsibility. We just need to take care of our own lives. The two sat on a bench in a nearby park. Since the new school term began, Ethan had become more active and interacting with friends than before. Thank you for joining me. The experience of that day seemed to have made him grow significantly. Mom, I've been thinking, Ethan said while sitting on the bench. What is a real family? Rebecca was a little surprised by her son's question. Why do you ask that? When I was talking with the counselor, I started thinking about family. Ethan looked up at the sky. Dad and Mom and I were a family. But when Dad started scaring us, was that really a family? Rebecca was moved by her son's deep thinking. At 12 years old, he had become able to think about such complex problems. What do you think? Rebecca wanted to hear her son's opinion. I think that a real family isn't about blood relations, but about relationships where we can protect each other. Ethan looked at his mother. I want to protect Mom, and Mom protects me too. I think that's what family is. Rebecca teared up her son's words. Perfectly expressed what she had felt, deep in her heart for a long time. That's exactly right, Ethan. You're really wise. Mom and I both care about each other. I think that's the most important thing. Ethan continued a little shyly. I'm worried about Dad, but we can walk our own path, right? Rebecca hugged her son. During these 3 months, the two had overcome many difficulties. Police interviews, courthouse procedures, counseling, and above all, they had been able to deepen their trust in each other. Speaking of which, I have good news. Rebecca changed the subject. There's talk of a promotion at the company. I might become a manager in the sales department. Really, that's great. Ethan's face brightened. If I get promoted, we might be able to move to a bigger apartment. We could even make you your own study room. That sounds good, but I like our current home too. As long as I can be with Mom. Anywhere is fine. Rebecca was warmed by her son's kindness. Through this difficult experience, he had learned what was truly important about Michael. Rebecca carefully brought up the topic. Last week I got a call from his treating physician. Your father is cooperating with treatment and has found a new job in another state. Ethan showed a complex expression. Is that a good thing? I'm sure it is. It means Dad can start a healthy life in a new environment. Rebecca placed her hand on her son's shoulder. But we won't be in contact for a while. I think that's best for everyone. Ethan nodded quietly. He still had complex feelings about his father, but you could see his attitude of trying to accept it positively. As evening approached, families returning home could be seen in the park. Rebecca and Ethan also stood up and began walking toward home. Mom, how about we go see a movie this weekend? Ethan suggested. That sounds good. What would you like to see? An action movie would be good. But something Mom likes is fine too. Rebecca held her son's hand. Ahead of them, many more weekends and time to spend together were waiting. Having overcome difficult experiences, that time had become more precious and had deeper meaning. We'll be all right, Ethan, Rebecca said with conviction. I think so too. I wanted them to for turning me. Ethan looked up at his mother and smiled. Because we're a real family. As the evening sun stretched their shadows long, mother and son quietly headed home.